into my latest live broadcast. My name is CareyHolzman, and today I've got a very special show, and I'm going to introduce three guests. We got a little bit of an echo here. Three guests are joining me today. This is all thanks to the folks at StreamYard for making this possible at StreamYard.com. And there we go, get a wider shot here. Who do we start with? I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves, and then I'll explain why you're all here. And let's start with a name that, well, the game Qbert. It's a word. I've never met anybody in my life who didn't know what that word was, even though it's not an English word. It's a made-up word. Everybody, at least in America that I've ever spoken to, knows this word. Where did it come from? How does it exist? Of course, we're talking about arcade games and the pioneers who have created a career out of gaming. Please welcome in Mr. Warren Davis. Hi, Warren.
Hello. Hello. How was everybody? Oh, I hear an echo. I hear my own echo.
All right. You might have audio. One of us might have audio up. Well, I'll turn my audio down a little bit. Welcome into the show, Warren. How do you refer to yourself? Your creator, co-creator, author, actor?
I was just going to say Warren, but Warren. No, I just call me Warren. You can call me the co-creator of Qbert. It was a three-person team. Myself, Jeff Lee, and Dave Thiel. I was the designer and programmer. Jeff was the graphic artist. Dave was the sound designer. So we each had our own roles, but we communicated heavily throughout. And as the designer, I gave those guys a lot of my ear and my trust. So they contributed so greatly to the design that when it was over, in my mind, it was the Qbert triumvirate, I like to call it. So, but you can call me co-creator of Qbert, sure.
Wonderful. Well, welcome in. It's wonderful to have you here. In the bottom, where are we? Top right is Todd Tuckey from TNT Amusements. Todd, tell us a little about yourself.
Well, I got into business back in '79. The
business of
selling, actually operating games like Qbert when they were brand new, putting them in locations. And then in '84, I started home sales, and I've now sold almost 30,000 machines into the home market. That is now 100% of our business. We stopped most of our sales we stopped all of our location collections in 2013. So if you think about it, we made a complete reversal from vending the equipment strictly to home sales now. So that's my history. 42 years of it.
That's amazing, and I'm going to get to all this. And this leads us to the bottom left corner is Shilo. Shilo joins us from, and I believe you're a co-founder. But this is from New Wave Toys, and I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Shilo. I'm the founder of New Wave Toys, and I'm also the toy maker at New Wave Toys. And we've been around now for 3 years, and we make miniaturized replicas in 1/6 scale of classic arcade machines and products you would find in an arcade.
Well, I've got to tell you, I wanted to do something kind of a full circle here, which is the arcade creator, the arcade operator, the arcade repair person that keeps it all running, and now arcade replicas. Now, I hate to use this word replica lightly, Shilo, because I grew up as a teenager in the 1980s. And life was, I'm going to take this on a little serious turn here, but stick with me. It's a good story. Life was very difficult for me. I'm short. I got a girl's name. I was constantly bullied. Physically, I had to learn how to run quickly because if I got caught, I'd be beaten. And my escape because everything in my life seemed like everybody was attacking me. And my safe place was the arcade. When I went to the arcade, I never got bullied. When I had three things in my life that, without which I probably wouldn't be standing here today, because I wanted it to stop. And I don't mention this lightly, but while these are games, you have to understand that there are people like me that had a profound impact for a reason to continue to exist, something that took away the pain, even if temporarily. And never once at the arcade was I ever bullied or made fun of. Was I never, there wasn't a situation where I wasn't accepted. But even coming home, my parents would say, because I got into home computers and they'd see me doing that and not doing schoolwork, because I hated school, because it was like going to jail, basically. And parents would, threaten to take the computer away from me because they felt I was spending too much time on it. You got to figure out what you're going to do for a living. These computers are not computers. My dad used to program System 36s and such with IBM, and he considered them to be toys. And I better get my act straight and figure out what I'm going to do for a living. Now, here we are with the first generation of folks who created the abilities to make a career out of gaming. And you think of all the careers that spun off, whether it's Todd's career of repairing the machines, whether it's Warren's career of creating the game, which, I got a million questions about how you get started in that, or now Shilo's career about these replicas. And the reason I don't really like calling these replicas is because I've seen replicas and they suck. Nothing offends me more than when something doesn't match my memory. When Star Wars isn't the Star Wars I saw. When Coke becomes New Coke and it isn't the Coke that I grew up with. And when Galaga or Tempest or Qbert, these little keychain size games, or even, the Atari versions, the Atari 20, these were not the games in my memory. And Shilo, you're a madman. I cannot believe the detail in these games. First of all, I promise I'll give each of you a moment to talk here, but I got to get this out of my system. What sort of person, let me just bring a close-up on this, because I can't imagine how much trouble this was and how it was worth it. But I'm so glad you did it. These arcade games are true in their shape, the light-up marquees, and here's where I think you're crazy. Dragon's Lair was the first game that used a laser disc in cartoons. And you wouldn't know, unless you've ever worked on one, that inside of this machine, there's a laser disc player, and you added it. What were you thinking? I mean, it doesn't do anything, right? I mean, I kind of wonder if there's actually anything on this laser disc, because I wouldn't be surprised if you have some secret code on there. And it even includes a little remote control. Are you crazy? I love this so much. You have no idea. And it's tucked away in a drawer where no one would ever know it was there. And you went to the effort. I mean, the detail on this is amazing. And it plays like the game. People are like, well, you could bring up MAME. No. No, first of all, you don't sit down to play the game. Secondly, the control board was critical and how you controlled the game. Again, it's about matching the memory, and these are so true and honest. It's absolutely insane. Even the little light up buttons on Asteroids. The detail, I cannot tell you, I cannot express to you how impressed I am. And the price on these is much cheaper than you'd think until they're sold out and you have to pay $400 for a Dragon's Lair like I did. But we'll get to that. Shilo, really quickly, what are you thinking, man?
Well, we're just trying to do the best job we can on recreating the experience. And, I'll always say it, but nothing beats the original machines and the original experience. And, what Todd is selling with the refurbished original cabinets, if you can afford it and you have the space, mean, that's the way to go. That's the real deal. We're just doing our best, trying to capture as much detail and as much of the original spirit of the actual machines. And that goes for everything you just mentioned, from the shape of the cabinet to the materials we use. We try to use the most authentic materials, being wood. Our coin doors are made out of metal. We pay a lot of attention to surface textures and the type of vinyl we use for the stickers. Just trying to get as much as we can for people like yourself that appreciate all these little details that add up to our experience of the original games. Now, we've also recently started adding in After Dragon's Lair, which was a Kickstarter for our company. The community is always constantly making suggestions, and we set some really fun goals of adding HDMI out, USB controller support, and trying to add as much value into our machines too, in that regard, as much play value. And those are features now that we're carrying over into new projects.
Yeah, and on what he's talking about here, on the back of the Dragon's Lair game, there is a HDMI output. Let's see if I can get that close up. Is it this camera? No. Well, yeah, that camera will work. There's an HDMI output as well as USB input. So you can put this on your big screen TV, just set the box down and use it as a console if you like. Yep. But then you don't have the control board, right? But you're fixing that with upcoming, was it 1942, 1943? Is that right? You're doing the control board, because the controllers, it's a critical part of the game.
Oh, for sure. So you can actually use our Street Fighter controller on our Dragon's Lair. And like you mentioned, with 1942, 1943, we have dedicated mini sticks. But you can also use your Xbox One controller, your PS4 controller, the USB controllers. They'll work in the back of Dragon's Lair.
And why Shilo and Warren are joining us, in part, is because their next game that you can pre-order right now is, you want to guess? It's Qbert, of course. And these games, first I'll ask you, Todd, you've taken these apart on your channel.
Yes.
Are they built as good as on the inside as they are on the outside? Because I don't have the guts to take. I just feel it's blasphemous to take this apart.
We've taken them all apart, and we have them detailed on the videos. The first one, of course, was Centipede, and it was beautifully made. There were a couple of hiccups with it, but after that, everything else after that required zero adjustments or uploads or anything. And we if you watch our videos, you just go on our channel, TNT Amusements, and then just type replicade, or replicade. Some people like to call it that. And there's different ways. I call it replicade. I think that's pretty close. But just watch the video, and you'll see the inside. Nice wood, beautifully run electronics. It's just great. It's a wonderful product, and we haven't damaged it. We've been able to get it back together again. They come apart very easily with screws. However, I don't recommend you take your game apart. We do it for the video. So
no, I'm glad you did it, so I didn't have to.
Right.
And
does that void the warranty if you take the back off?
Oh, I'm sure it would.
Yeah, it does. You're not supposed to take it apart, but we let Todd do whatever he wants.
Yeah, well, we have to. We have to show people. Of course, the Dragon's Lair was the most impressive. We were just floored by that. That was just wonderful. So if you've watched some of our live videos, we actually pump it on the screen in the back.
Yep.
And play the game and such. And you guys have had great fun with that, and you will too. And once again, you'd be a fool. I already ordered the double Qbert set, so I put my order in a couple days ago. You'd be a fool not to buy these now, while you can get that discount. because if you wanted to, you could double your money in 6 months. So you'd be a fool not to buy these. Now, I can't tell you how many people have tried to buy mine, which I won't sell. My goal is I'm going to have every single one, all lined up. So plus, when I make a new video, I have all the other ones lined up. So why not?
They're way underpriced. I shouldn't say that, but they're way underpriced.
They're only underpriced in the beginning, right, Shilo? I mean, you have
well, we just raised the price, so I wouldn't. We should speak to that. I mean, we tried to keep our prices as low as we possibly can. We mostly sell like Todd, direct to consumer.
Yeah, but you've noticed. Shilo, you've noticed that they're worth $500 now.
Yeah, Centipedes actually just went last week for $650.
Right. So you have them underpriced pretty much now. The retail's underpriced.
Yeah, well,
now that deal you have. You can get 2 different Quberts for under $300 if you pre-order it today. When's the sale over, Shilo?
On Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific. So we're winding it down.
There it is.
You can see on eBay right now, the Centipede is 600, 624, 625, and that's if you can even get one. If you're just lucky to acquire it at this point. If we look for Dragon's Lair, I think that's Tempest. There's one for $800, Shilo.
Yeah, the Tempest is wonderful. Everything's wonderful. I mean, this stuff just gets better and better. So, the HDA, boy, what a great idea to put that cable in. That was just wonderful. Are you going to do that with Qbert and also with 1942?
Yeah, actually both. I actually have a production 1942 right here with me. I don't know if you can see the detail of the coin door, which I'm rather proud of, with the gold and the silver. Turned out really nicely. And here's a shot of the back.
High voltage.
Of course it does. The HDMI is underneath this sticker.
I love it. I love it.
And actually, Todd.
Yes.
We watch your videos and have for years, and we learn so much from you. You can see the serial number sticker. Everything is reversed. I'm sorry. The serial number sticker with the ROM star sticker underneath is exactly like the Dynamo 1943 cab that you did a overhaul on.
Okay.
Yeah, so we stopped the video and stilled it and enlarged it to copy the actual real stickers from the
wow. I'm thrilled that you're I feel really honored. My God, that's wonderful.
No, I mean you've been great, and I mean Aaron, who's product manager, has hit you up for absurd questions, and you've always came back and answered us and given us the information we needed. So we really appreciate you.
Oh, great. Thanks. I do appreciate it. It's good. It's good to be recognized after all these years.
Oh, man.
But of course, I'm full of endless knowledge that nobody wanted to know about before. Think about that. It's just like these old games. We were junking Quberts. We were junking the games. And I was too. I was converting them because we wanted to make money with them. We didn't want to preserve them. And now this whole market has completely reversed. This is the only commercial market that has taken a 180-degree turn. Qbert and 1943 and Dragon's Lair were only built to make money. That's it. They were not built to be loved and kept in a collection. No, they were built to earn money like a dishwasher. You bought the dishwasher to clean dishes. You bought the arcade game to make money. And now, 180 degrees later, they're in classic arcades, all on free play. You pay a flat price to go in and play these marvelous machines from your childhood. And that's just what's happening now. People are obsessed with the games because they loved them. And games like Tempest and Dragon's Lair, the manufacturers are long gone, aren't they? But it's a legacy, and Warren is part of the legacy. Like it or not, he's always going to be known of being Mr. Qbert. I mean,
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I wanted to ask Warren, what does that feel like? I mean, I'm sure you had no idea that you would create the most successful video game for Gottlieb that they ever had, that 40 years on featured in films like Wreck-It Ralph, right?
Yeah.
That spun off to a cartoon series, little plushies and such and things. So much Qbert marketing. Did you ever, in your wildest imagination, think for a minute that you were doing anything but something temporary that was going to have a shelf life of about 5 or 6 years and move on to something else? I mean, there's all of this. I guess what I'm asking is, what does that feel like to be you and to have all of this? Or were you expecting it all?
Well, that's a very big question. And the simple answer, and I think the honest answer is it's wonderful. It's a wonderful feeling. You know, my life is not an unusual life. I don't walk down the street being the creator of Qbert. I just walk down the street being some guy going to the grocery store or a barbershop. You know, I just live my life. So you know, it's wonderful to have created something that has touched so many people. I cannot diminish that enough. It's just very powerful. I don't want to make light of it in any way. It's a really wonderful feeling for which I'm very grateful. And yes, you are correct in that. No, I never expected anything like that. Not in my wildest dreams. You know, the game was done. It was successful. It was my first game that I was in charge of, that I sort of created, and I just went on to other things after that. And you know, you gotta understand that for about 15 years of my life after that, you know, nobody really did remember Qbert. It was disposable. It was, you know, it was the hot thing, and then 2 years later, it wasn't anymore. They were on to other games. Of course, I stayed in the industry. I went on, you know, and made other games and worked with other companies, and so I was always looking at the next thing, and I was never looking back. It really wasn't until the mid 1990s, and I was working for Disney at the time, making home games for Disney, and that's when there started to be this sort of weird interest in these old games. But it took 15 years, and it really percolated for about a decade as it slowly grew, which again took me by surprise, because if you look now at what it's grown into, retro gaming is a huge industry, and yeah, it's all a overwhelming surprise to me.
I just can't imagine what that feels like to know somebody mentions Qbert, made up word, and it's a household name. You're an unsung hero in that you can walk down the street, people don't know who you are, right? Which is
maybe that's a good thing.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you don't have to, not Paul McCartney, where you can't even go to a grocery store without, you know, being mobbed by people, and they'll text message all their friends, and 5 minutes later, you can't go anywhere. I imagine there's probably not a lot of fortune involved in it financially with regards to Qbert. However, you have achieved something in cultural status, and you did it in a time where really when you look at the top, if we look at the 15 top best-selling arcade games of all time, I believe Qbert's number 15. Most of them, I believe, are Japanese. There's not a lot of American video game creators that had that level of success. We had some Atari and Williams, right? But I believe like Pac-Man and Donkey Kong, these were Galaga, these were, I believe, Japanese innovations, and they kind of led the market that way. So you're one of the few Americans that have achieved that level of success. And when I did a little research on this, Warren, I was surprised to learn that one of the high score holders was, let's see if I can find the article here, Doris Self, who was born September 18th, 1925, and sadly she passed in 2006. And she was a video game competitor who at one point held the high score for Qbert. So we're spanning generations of people who found appeal, much in the way that people have that connection with music. It's very personal. And while I had parents who were opposed to me playing games, here's somebody the age of their parents who was beating kids my age at our generation's technology, at our game. That just blows my mind. I never saw, when I walked into an arcade, I never saw older people there, maybe 30s. Nobody that was, 60 years old playing. And this lady held the high score. It blows my mind.
Yeah, she was kind of a rarity. Let's face it. I don't think there were a lot of people in her category, but and I never got to meet her, but I was aware of her. Again, sometime I think in the late 1990s, I became aware of her. Maybe early 2000s, but she was somewhat unique.
And I got to ask, you created the game, so clearly you're the one who's going to have the highest score, right?
Oh God, no. You know that's not true. Come on, you're baiting me there. Yeah,
maybe you put a little back door in there.
I was, when I started in the industry, I was definitely a game player. I loved games. I didn't go to the arcades so much. I wasn't a kid, but so I pretty much was, playing in the bars. But I did love playing arcade games, and but I was not a huge scorer. I wasn't that competitive, and I really played for fun. It'd be great if I got a good score, and I certainly was known to slam my fist on a cabinet if I felt like I got robbed. But yeah, I wasn't a great player. And of course, I was humbled after Qbert was released, and the people who played it were playing it so many hours longer than I ever could. All of management at Gottlieb, by the way, was taken by surprise. They kept their notes to me were always, make it easier. It's too hard. It's too hard. They were worried that people wouldn't be able to master it. And then it went out into the world, and people just not everybody, because to this day, there are people who tell me they can't master it, but there were people who, mastered it quite quickly.
And, one of the things that, what attracted me to Qbert were by the way, I'm no good at Qbert. I'm lucky if I get to the third level. But one of the things that really attracted me to it was when Qbert fell off the screen, you heard something knock inside of the machine, like it wasn't a speaker, it was something physical hitting the wood, and I was like, whoa, that's pretty cool. And that attracted me to play the game. Now, Shilo and Todd, let's see how I wanted to ask this. Let me start with Todd. How did they accomplish that knocking sound?
Well, they used an actual knocker mechanism Gottlieb had in all their pinball machines. It was a coil, an electromagnetic coil, 30 volts, and it was activated by a transistor on the main logic board, which was the same transistor that activated it on a pinball machine. And the game code told it to knock. And they had it fused, but typically when the fuse blows out, the operator puts on whatever he has, or a piece of tin foil around it, and sooner or later the coil fries. But in the beginning, first few years, the coil usually worked, and you heard that wonderful, satisfying physical knock in the machine that was unique and not coming out of the speaker.
Yes, and is it my understanding, because I don't know what a knocker is when you say it's a pinball knocker, you say that like, oh, of course. But it's an actual pinball, the steel ball.
Yes. Mm-hmm. It's not a steel ball. Actually, let me find one for you right now.
It's a rod
behind me.
It's a metal rod.
It's a solenoid.
It's just the rod? It's not hitting a ball.
Yeah, I can actually show. Here it is right here. If you look behind me, that is it right there. Now, what it is, it's a piece of... it's a metal bracket. There's a coil there, the two wires, and you can actually see the fuse. And then a rod inside moves up when the coil is turned on. It's mounted right in back of the coin mechanism. So we're looking in the back of a Qbert, and on the bottom is the transformer and that big fat capacitor there. And this provides all the goofy voltages that Gottlieb's board needed. Now over here on this side, I'm not sure if you can see the I'll actually point at it. It may be easier. You can actually see the power supply here that we added to make it more efficient. And then you can see the neck of the picture tube here. But the knocker coil is in clear view. A lot of times that piece of the knocker coil would fry and smoke, and people thought the game was on fire. The smoke would billow out of the machine. And they would
Just another feature.
It was a feature of the game. Yeah, 4D. Yeah, 4D.
It's so realistic.
And a lot of times people, as I said, the knocker disappeared. We were talking earlier before we went on the air, and half the Quberts I get in have the fried coil, or it's missing completely. The whole mechanism got pulled out and tossed. So when we resell them, we reinstall it and put it back in, so the feature's back in the game. Now I understand that there's, oh, by the way, there's a dip switch on the logic board, so you can turn off the knocker if you don't want it to knock. So there is a feature to disable it, but you could just as easily unplug it too. So, but some people, oh, what's that noise? You know, now that's the same coil and knocker. When you win a free game in pinball, you hear the exact same sound.
Oh,
so that's what it is.
Okay.
So it just goes knock. It hits against the steel, and you can hear it, and sometimes you can feel a little bit. I guess it depends on where it's mounted in the game. That's all. It was just something cute. Interestingly enough, I think Warren said it. He said Gottlieb had them laying around. Well, we have them in these pinballs. Let's use it in this game. And they added a line. Now, keep in mind that added cost to the manufacturing of the cabinet. So, you know, Gottlieb put quite a bit of effort. This was their third release, and of course the one that sold tons of. And they put a lot of effort into this, and and it shows. It shows the quality of the game and the construction. The only thing we hated about Qbert is the control panel was held down by 2 wing nuts instead of latches. So if you had to get into the control panel to take it off to clean the screen or something like that, you had to take these long wing nuts off. Oh, what a pain in the ass. But that was the only bad thing about the game.
Well, that's why you got paid the big bucks, though.
Oh yeah, big bucks. Some
now,
people
Shilo,
made a lot of money.
For the love of all that's holy, please tell me you put a little knocker in this upcoming Qbert miniature replica.
Interesting.
Well, we did, but I decided to take it out to save a few bucks.
Oh.
I wanted it to be just like it was at Gottlieb.
No.
Yes,
well, it's good having you here,
100%. We have a knocker built in. It's a lot smaller than the one Todd showed. It does run on 12 volts, and it's about
really
that 2.5, 3 inches long. It's not the most powerful thing, but it's to scale.
I'm impressed.
And one of the best things that Warren reported back, because Warren was good enough to take our early prototype, test it, give us all his feedback, let us know what we needed to improve on, what we missed, etc., etc. And the story, and Warren, you could tell it a heck of a lot better than me, but the knocker sound is meant, and I didn't know this, is meant to be the sound of Qbert or coily hitting the bottom of the cabinet.
Right. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think I was surprised to hear you say that you were never aware of that.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought most people sort of got that, but as we both know, you and I, Shilo, that knocking sound wasn't the ideal one that I was looking for. And Todd, you were talking about how Gottlieb spared no expense in adding this coil, but the part of the story you don't know is that I didn't want the sound of a knock because, as Shilo just said, that what I was going for was a thud. I wanted it to sound like a body hitting the bottom of the cabinet, and the knocker sound was a great idea. It was, by the way, the idea of one of our engineering techs, Rick Ty is his name, and so we put it in. But when I heard the knock, I thought, that's not the right sound. Can we somehow soften that sound, make it sound more like a thud than a knock? And we played around with various ways to do that, and we ended up putting in a little piece of foam, kind of a thick foam that you get out of the end of a IC tube. And when the piston hit the foam, which was stuck to the cabinet, the wood, it softened the sound just a little bit and sounded a little bit more like a thud. So that's what we wanted. And we went to Gottlieb and management and said, that's what we want. And they were like, well, we can do the knockers, but putting the foam in and cutting it and making sure it's the right place and affixed, they thought that was going to add too much of a labor cost, and they nixed that idea. So, even though people love that feature, and I love that people love that feature, I am cursed with the knowledge of just how much better that could sound.
Yeah,
Now,
and just to add to that, our knocker not being a full-size knocker scaled down, we actually achieved more of a thud than you would imagine what a pinball knocker would sound like. So we were very happy to hear that report back from Warren that, we're good. Our miniaturized solenoid actually sounds pretty accurate. So
Yeah.
we're very happy.
What
with that.
interesting enough, in the chat, Sherry McFarland says the Pixels movie made it sound like a bucket of Legos hitting the floor when Qbert fell and went to pieces. That was a good
Yeah, I
movie
forgot.
too, by the way.
I forgot they featured Qbert in that movie too.
Yes, that was a
Yes,
good
it's
movie.
such a part of American culture, especially in the 80s. And I love, there was so much new in the 80s. So much original ideas were presented where TV started broadcasting in stereo. There were Sony Walkmans. You could take your music with you. And then, the reason this is up here is an old Altair 8800 replica. And this was in the 70s. If you wanted to build one of these, and you could play games with it, you could start playing, I'm not sure how to make it work now, Pong, where, where's my reset? There's my reset. I'll have to figure it out. The light goes back and forth, and you play against two players, and you have to flip the switches at the right time to send the ball the other way. And Jeff, that's the 70s. And less than 10 years later, we have this, amazing technology, Marble Madness, coming out with incredible sound we'd never heard from an arcade before. Qbert introduced a whole different play field. We were mentioning earlier before the broadcast, the only thing close to it maybe was Zaxxon, maybe. But Qbert added so many different layers of innovation in whether it's the knocker, the gameplay concept, or the character itself, which I know there's a story about that as well. But before, or if we have time to get to that, I want to also let people know that, Warren, you have a book coming out. It's available for pre-order now on Amazon. Tell us a little about that.
Yeah, sure. Well, I started going to retro gaming shows, many years ago. I didn't go to them very often, but then in the last few years, as they've grown, I started getting invited more, and I started preparing talks of stories, and just because I bore myself saying the same thing over and over, I prepared a number of different talks about Qbert, about us versus them, about the digitizing work I did at Williams, and other things. And eventually I just started to think, my God, there are actually a lot of stories, and it seems like people are actually interested in them, which was somewhat shocking. And then I started to get this idea of writing a book and just collecting all of these stories and putting them into a book. Well, that idea gestated for quite a while because I don't know if you've ever tried it, but sitting down and writing a book, not so easy. It takes a lot of time. So, but I did start on it, and I did eventually finish it. Well, I was just going to self-publish it. I didn't want to, go through finding a publisher, and that just seemed like a whole other thing. And as I was going to retro gaming shows, I just thought, well, I'll just bring it to a show, and I'll be able to sell it and sign it for people. Well, then the pandemic happened. So I took it to actually one show. I took it to Free Play Florida in the end of 2019. Then the pandemic happened, and all of my travels were canceled. And so I started to think, well, I was sitting home a lot in 2020. I started to think, well, let me reach out to some publishers. So that's what I did. And I actually found a publisher who was interested in publishing it. So once I struck a deal with them, the self-published version of my book is no more. It's completely dead. And we've been working, basically, it's the same book, but we've been just massaging a little bit. And so it's got a new title. It'll have, a new layout. It's been edited just ever so slightly. And it'll come out in the fall. But as you said, it is available for pre-order right now on Amazon and I think Barnes & Noble. But and I will still bring it to shows, and I'm happy to sign it for people. But yeah, it'll be a slightly different book.
I
just put a link any better.
Yeah, Warren,
I won't know any better. It'll be the only book. But I'm looking forward to reading it. And yeah, I'm kind of curious, Warren and Shilo, there are two different versions of the Qbert replicade. I don't know what a replica is. That you're offering. One I've never seen before. I didn't really understand why this was special, and now I think I want it, especially since you just announced, Shilo, the quantity of these that you're going to make. You want to talk a bit? Let's see, who wants to take that?
I can.
All right, Shilo.
Well, first off, I'd like to mention that we've been doing a variant edition of our new releases. And one of the variants that we do is called the Overhaul Edition. And Todd, again, I mean, this is really, influenced by yourself and the work that you guys do over there at TNT. When you recondition a cabinet, it comes in and, sometimes it just looks like it's been through war, right? And then Todd and the team, they keep the good parts that are still usable and presentable, and then they switch out, they repaint, and they do a full overhaul of everything, all the electronics, all the paint, matching on the side of the artwork, everything, right? So we started doing this with Asteroids, where we did an overhaul edition, and we put on different colored T-molding, the blue T-molding, and we left like the original control panel with cigarette burns in it and stuff like that on there, and people really, really like this concept. So with Qbert, we're like, well, what should we do? And, digging on the internet, Qbert, what can we do? What can we do? What don't we know? And, we came across Tony Temple's blog, the arcade blogger. He does amazing, excellent work. And Tony did a blog on Warren's pre-production Qbert machine that he actually owns, and it has moved from Chicago to LA and has kept it for many years, and it is in his home today. So we thought, you know what, this would be really cool. The artwork is so off the wall, it's so different, that this would make a really great variant. And we try to keep these variants, the build quantities, pretty low, and the price is a little bit higher to buy them. But with Warren's cab, we're trying to take it to the next level, where we're actually trying to copy a lot of the actual distressing of the cabinet that he has. Trying to reproduce some the promotional stickers and stuff like that have been put on over time. And of course, there's a really unique swear word marquee and a whole different set of artwork for the cabinet. So I believe Aaron reached out to Warren on I think it was Twitter, honestly, or something like that earlier this year. and we had a discussion with Warren, told him what what we were planning on doing, and you know, went over the schedule and timing and stuff like that, and here we are today.
I gotta have one. So you've got a limited edition. They're available for pre-order for what, 2 more days? Is that right?
2 more days, yeah. And this is it actually right here. So
where do you keep that, and when do you leave the building?
well, we're thinking maybe giving this one back to Warren just because he's such a good guy. So I mean, he owns the original prototype. He should own the prototype for the project also. Right?
Got my
Agreed.
fingerprints on it.
I put a link for the pre-order up in the chat, folks. So go in
really
there because you only got 2 days.
Only 2 days, yeah, and we don't have many left. Another really unique thing is the Gottlieb raised letter coin door, which I actually prefer.
Ooh.
It's, of course, this is a prototype, so this is SLA plastic, right? But for production, it'll be metal, and it'll all be the proper colors and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the raised letters, boy, that was actually a touch of class from Gottlieb, I will tell you. Nobody had done it. Well, actually, it was done. Cinematronics did that too.
Yep.
In fairness, and I think some Centauri games had it, but it was just an extra element they did not have to do, and it was very nice that they did. And do you know how many people switch the doors out once you got a break in? They bend that door to smithereens, and so a lot of the Qberts will come in fitted with a different door. We've tried to put the original doors back in. I'm out of them now because people have been emailing me they want to buy the door, and I don't have any more raised letter doors. So that may be an object, something that would sell. Somebody wants to put back in production. Travis Reynolds is remaking those really hard to find joysticks. He just made the set of joysticks. Oh gosh, what was the game? It was a really rare Atari game, right out of my head. Oh my god.
720.
Well, he makes that. He also makes gosh, it's a tank game.
Battle Zone.
Battle Zone.
Not Battle Zone. Well, Travis made the bellows for Battle Zone. Nobody had those bellows, those rubber bellows for the 2 joysticks. So he makes them. He has a Facebook page, Arcade Harnesses. He specializes in making harnesses for these games. He will actually make a Qbert harness for you with the same color wire, as long as his supply of wire is difficult right now, because I'm having him make me a custom 4-player Atari football harness. And he can't get certain colors because of the COVID and the shortages. Everybody's aware these shortages are killing us because we can't get parts for pinball machines. All the pinball manufacturers have to stop production because they're missing one part. So they can't make 100 pinball machines because they need one specific part to continue production. So a lot of brand new games are difficult and being held up. We're hoping, of course, that the Qberts won't be held up. But, trying to find one single part, that really hurts a lot of this industry, especially when you have a lot of parts. But you have to rely now on individuals making these retro parts to keep us all alive. If they weren't doing it, we'd be in big trouble. So,
well, and Shilo has made these available and affordable on these miniatures. But what if I wanted a full size, Todd? Do you have any of those currently in inventory?
No, Qberts are so difficult to find now. Everybody knows the biggest industry boost we've ever had when the arcade one-ups came out. Oh, it was doom and gloom. Everybody, nobody's going to want to collect. Actually, the arcade one-ups have single-handedly created a new demand for not only buying the real game, the real arcade game, but classic arcades everywhere. You can sell Qberts for $3,500 now. That's more than it was new. I mean, brand new, it was $26.99 or $25.99 or something like that. So it's crazy now because the classic arcades have to have a Qbert in there. They have to. Now, you could put, one of those horrible replicate. I not replicate the
How dare you?
multicade, the multicade boards in it. I hate.
Oh yeah,
that.
like the JAMA board.
I have to do it. I've been making multicades, for the last 18 years, but I never advertised them because it's gray area stuff. And so I was still selling more regular games, but I had customers that came in that did not want to buy 5 individual games. They wanted to buy one game that had all these games in it, and I was forced to carry them. What are you going to do? You have to stay open and keep your bills paid and stuff. So we made them, but I tried to stay away from converting games. I only had a couple customers send me Qberts so I could put in the J-Rock board that plays all of the different Gottlieb games, and it orients the monitor so you could play Kroll and other games, but at least it would be in the Qbert cabinet. But I hated doing that, but I can tell you I've probably done a lot more just Qberts alone than anything else, in terms of probably have 35 of them out there in the home.
You've sold about 30.
Probably 30, 35 over the years. Not many. Wow. Nothing like the Pac-Mans. Pac-Mans are over 1,000 now. All the Pac-Man series have sold tons of Miss Pac-Mans, but that's our number one seller. I meant to tell you too, something special about Qbert. Qbert is one of the few games that appeal also to women equally. We mentioned this earlier before we went live on the chat. Pac-Man, all the Pac-Man series are popular with men and women. The second most popular game with men and women, as you already know, is Centipede. But the third one's Qbert. It really is. I mean, from what I see, the women come in, do you have Qbert? Do you have Qbert? Do you have Qbert? I say,
I'm glad you brought that up. And the reason is I felt like we're having a bunch of middle-aged white men on this show. There's not a lot of diversity, and I wanted to bring some other folks in. And I started to Google, are there any famous arcade creators that were female? And I found one, and she worked for Atari, and she created Centipede.
Donna Bailey.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, it's Donna Bailey. She's really great.
There you go.
She supported us with their Centipede launch.
So I reached out last minute, and I haven't heard back from her, but I guess she says there was a lot of harassment working in a male environment and had left, but had co-created Centipede, which of course we've Shilo has recreated here with respect, as all the other ones are. Very detailed, little tiny trackball. It's fantastic. But I do hope to bring her on and talk to her a bit about what that was like. And I'm not quite sure, even going to the arcades, we didn't often see a lot of females in the arcades.
Right.
And to this day, I don't understand why. And in my career fixing and building computers, I don't run into very many women who do that. And it doesn't make any sense to me. But I'm going to follow up on that, and hopefully I'll be able to bring her on the show. We'll talk about that whole process. I think now she was teaching and encouraging women in video game industry, if I'm not mistaken. So yes, there were some games that if there were women in the arcades, if there were girls in the arcades, they did tend to hover around certain games.
Yes, they did.
Yeah,
now
that's true.
You should also mention Betty Ryan in 1982 developed one of the most expensive video games you could ever buy, Quantum, Atari's Quantum. So few were made, and they're now selling in excess of $6,000 to $8,000 now to buy a real Atari factory Quantum. And I vended a Quantum down the Jersey Shore in one of these little motel arcades that I used to have, and I'd be lucky to do $5 or $6 a week gross on that Quantum, and I ended up selling it to a homeowner for $600. Of course, that was the old days. I thought it was a great game, but it did not get the play. Even that, and that was a fully designed by a woman, Betty Ryan, and then the composer was Patty Goodson. I'm getting this off of. I had to look it up at Wikipedia. I couldn't remember.
Well, unlike Centipede and Qbert, I never heard of Quantum. I don't recall ever seeing it in my arcade. We had a huge arcade. So it's some of these games we talked about, like Polybius. Like, I never heard of that. I don't know what people are talking about or what it was supposed to be that never was. Like, whatever that was, I missed out. And then there are some other games that just weren't very popular, or they had a very short run, and my arcade, I guess, never had it, or I don't know. I was there every day, so if they'd have had it, I'd have known. But I want to get back just for a moment as we're wrapping up here, close to an hour. Shilo, I want to commend you as well that you have not abandoned sold games. I recently discovered that there's an update for Asteroids.
Yeah. No, we'll never abandon anything. So what we did with Asteroids is we actually spent a lot of time with selecting and developing some vector software for Tempest. And that, for the vector graphics. And they look very good on Tempest, and we're very happy with them. So we used the same screen for Asteroids. But we noticed that on the original Asteroids, when you fire, the actual bullet or missile looks quite big because of the phosphor in the actual monitor. So what we did is we enlarged the shot, so it's quite big, and what we thought would be easier for people to see on the screen. And lesson learned. We found out that some people didn't like it, and really from the beginning we should have known that you should be able to select, turn that off if you didn't like it. So we developed this firmware update for it and just added that extra menu option for people who wanted to downsize the size of the missile.
It's a really nice touch. A lot of first of all, the firmware update, it's almost like it's reprogramming the whole game. If I update a motherboard BIOS, it's like 16 megs. This felt like it was writing the whole game. I don't know what it's doing technically, but it's over 100 megs, as I recall. It took a while.
Yeah, it was rewriting everything. It's brand new firmware. So
I love that you did that. I love that it's free for folks and encourages.
We just want to do the best job we can, and if we mess something up like that, we'll fix our mistake, and we'll try to do better going forward.
Yeah, well, it's appreciated, I can tell you. I've seen a number of products in this industry where the companies, they sell you the product and then they move on. And we talk about motherboards that don't get BIOS updates for severe security flaws and things like that. And that brings me to the final thing I wanted to mention, which is the nostalgia factor of this, I think, is something other generations aren't going to have. If I were to plug in a PlayStation 2 in 40 years, I bet you, or even an Xbox, there's a number of games that are not going to play because they need to authenticate to a server online. And you'll have to rely on YouTube videos for your nostalgia. I'm not quite sure what workaround may or may not come of that in 40 years or 30 years. The beauty of these games, and I've talked about this a lot on my channel because I get a lot of folks that are into PC gaming, is the appeal. It's never ending. You will likely never win one of these games. As Ernest Cline said, the games of the 1980s, the video games, were the same level over and over and over again, and they only got harder and faster until you died, just like life.
That's a really great segue into something we haven't talked about yet. But Warren mentioned that a lot of people at Gottlieb felt that Qbert was too hard, and they encouraged him to make it easier and easier. And once it hit test market, they were a little bit concerned that maybe it was too easy and that people were just running the game popping in a quarter and playing for hours, right? So Warren developed, and Warren, you could talk about this better than I can, and was challenged to make a harder, faster, more challenging Qbert.
Well, let me correct you on that. Nobody at Gottlieb was thinking it was too easy. I was the only one thinking it was too easy.
Well, okay.
Nobody tasked me with making faster, harder, more challenging Qbert. That was my reaction to hearing stories about people playing for hours on a single quarter, 3-4 weeks after the game started rolling off the production line. So, but I did, and of course worked again with Jeff Lee. None of the sounds changed. It's exactly the same sounds. So Dave Thiel wasn't involved in the FHMC, but Jeff and I, put our heads together and started thinking about, well, what would we do? I knew exactly how I wanted to structure it, as far as changing the levels and the way the levels progressed, as far as speeding everything up, because it had been faster. And I had only slowed things down because the people at Gottlieb kept telling me it was too hard. So, and since it was my first game and I wasn't really an expert in tuning, so I sort of took their word for it. But yeah, I made faster, harder, more challenging Qbert. It was ready to go, months after Qbert started rolling off the production line. And of course, it took months for Qbert to filter throughout the country and the rest of the world. So people were still getting used to the original Qbert, and then they put faster, harder, more challenging Qbert out on test, and it didn't do well because people weren't ready for it. I was thinking they'd hold on to it for another 6 months or a year and then release it, but they did not, and I'm still puzzled to this day as to why they didn't. But anyway, when the people at New Wave reached out to me, said, well, we want to make your cabinet. I said, well, if you really want to make it authentic, you kind of have to put faster, harder, more challenging Qbert in there, because those are the ROMs I put into this cabinet almost instantly when I got it home. And for what, 12, 13 years, that was literally the only cabinet in the world that was running faster, harder, more challenging Qbert, because I was the only one who had the ROMs. And I've switched it out for regular Qbert on very rare occasions when I've had guests and they, they didn't want to mess with the harder version. But generally, faster, harder, more challenging Qbert has been my personal Qbert of choice, and it's been in this cabinet, and they put it into their Replicade. So it's in.
It's in. It'll be on both versions of Qbert, and of course, the Warren Davis version will boot into harder, faster, more challenging Qbert.
Is there any other?
You can switch out. You can always switch back to regular Qbert. Yep. And I tell people that because you have access to all of the operator settings in the New Wave version, you can set the difficulty on faster, harder, more challenging Qbert to easier. There's like 5 difficulty settings, and it's normally on normal, but there's also easy and easier. So you can set it to be easier, and you can also set it so that you get an extra life more quickly. So I recommend you do that if you're daunted by it. But if you're a Qbert fan, I think you'll enjoy it. I had this idea, something Todd said earlier, but Shilo, have you ever thought about having an arcade just dedicated to your replicades? How awesome would that be, to have a place where people can come in and, you've got all your machines lined up and people can just go over and, you just do it like a regular arcade, pay $10 at the door, come in and play play whatever game you want.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I mean, that really would be awesome. Maybe in a few years when we have a few more games out and
yeah,
like an experience type thing.
You could serve drinks in 1/6 scale martini glasses.
You know what? We have an arcade here called the Cobra Bar in Phoenix. It's a bar, and they play 80s music. They've got all the cabinets. It takes tokens. You got the change machine, and I got to go and show these kids how to play Galaga. They don't know, and the names of the drinks. There's like the Princess Peach drink. Like the whole thing's themed out to arcades. It's we could do that and just miniaturize it. I'm working on that already, Warren. I've already started my own. I always said, I wish one day I could own my own arcade. I should have been more specific.
Yeah. Well, they do look good lined up together. I have to say, they look really good lined up together. Yeah.
And they play
another
so
thing
good.
we're trying to do with all our games that don't have a track mode, we're trying to make a setting called replicate a track mode. So, you know, with Asteroids, actually was the first game we did this, where you could pump in some of the game audio when it's running in a track mode, because part of the ambience of a replicate is having, you know, the sounds, right, of all the individual cabinets going at the same time.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, it's like
Well,
walking
very
into a
important.
casino. Can you imagine walking into a quiet casino? No.
Yeah.
And just to go back to the madness of Shilo, I mean, again, I don't know what you're thinking, but I'm so glad that you're thinking it. Let's see if I can bring this camera up here. In some of the games, so this is with Asteroids, and I don't know why, you get little tiny quarters or tokens. Now, the game doesn't take them, right? They're just, I'm not exactly sure what the purpose is, but I love it.
Well,
What
the
are you
purpose
thinking?
is just, I mean, for fun, you know, and you could maybe put those up on the bezel, you know,
Yeah, for
next
next
player up, or put them in the coin return slots or something like that, you know. It's just for fun, and of course they're made out of metal, and you know, they got a little replicate stamp on them.
Even at that little keychain, right, with dragons that are the 50-cent.
Yeah,
And that thing's heavy. That thing weighs, it's like cast iron or something.
it's die cast metal, right? So yeah, our keychains, I mean, this is the same supply chain issues. I think we want to talk too much about this, but I mean, there's some serious problems right now with not only getting products and raw materials and the cost of those materials, but actually getting shipping containers to take products with batteries. Real challenge. And even our keychains that have a small nickel hydrate battery, carriers are just like, no thanks, too dangerous type of thing. And I guess they're in a position right now where they could pick and choose what cargo they want on the vessel and what they don't want. And as of right now, we have a full warehouse full of finished 1942s. We have keychains and some other goodies that we're having problems getting over here, but we're working on. And you know, I tell you, shipping costs are up, you know, 300-400% from the beginning of the year, and they continue to rise every week. So it is a real problem. Todd touched on it, and I just thought I'd mention it because, you know, you go to our website and there's some things that we want to keep in stock all the time, like keychains, but we're just having a real hard time right now.
Hey, Todd, is it easier for you to get used parts for old arcade games than new parts for new machines?
Yes and no. We had a power cord problem. I like a specific power cord that's 13 foot long and flat, and Steve Young at Pinball Resource couldn't get them. And the common power cord you're all familiar with is round, and we like the flat one, especially with the pinball machines, because you have 3 foot going into the pinball machine in addition to the cord that plugs into the wall. And he could not get them for almost 2 months. He finally got a shipment, but he said he was having trouble with copper to make the power cord.
Yeah.
And but little things like pop bumper rings or something, if your supplier is here in America and you can't get the steel, or number two, it's overseas, maybe in China or Japan, and they can't ship it over for some reason, or they can't make it, then your whole item is held up unless you can locate stuff in the States. You can find a hidden stash of some of these parts, especially with the older games. You remember older pinball machines, you're putting in common parts like posts and things. All the brand new games run on new electronics that you can't like make easily. They have to be manufactured under a lot of different terms and things, but older electronics we can still fix. So we're still able to fix Qbert boards, for instance.
Now, Todd, are you having you must be having a much harder time getting old cabinets to refurbish.
Oh yes, yeah. The water damage. Remember, I have a Marble Madness here. That is, we use it for testing, but the cabinet is completely waterlogged. It's unfixable. We've had the bottoms fall out of a lot of games, and yes, you can put a new bottom on it, but you have to really figure out when to draw the line. When is it where you really can't remanufacture or fix the existing cabinet? The answer is not to make a brand new cabinet. Then it's not original. I mean, you know, people make brand new Donkey Kong cabinets, but they're not original. We were talking about the movie Pixels. A friend of mine they ordered 100 classic games from him. All right, he runs he used to run a place out in California, and he had to come up with 100 classic arcade games for the movie Pixels. Well, he told me, Todd, I couldn't find some of the cabinets, so we remanufactured 40 of the 100 cabinets. They were brand new repros, but they were paid $4,000 a piece by the studio to manufacture those 100 cabinets. So they made the cabinets. Almost all the games in that movie Pixels are multicade boards with just the one game turned on. You really couldn't tell. And in most cases, they were flat screens because the video screens would flicker when they're photographed unless they're synced in with the camera shutter. So you have to work around what you're given. And they kept the 100 games in storage for Pixels until they decided they were not going to make Pixels 2. They were hoping it was going to be popular enough, and they sold all the machines. Believe it or not, they got at least $4,000 a piece for each of those the machines they manufactured, because of course they could say it was made for the movie Pixels. Who wouldn't want to get? I couldn't even get it. I mean, they flew out the door. They sold all 100 instantly to collectors who bought these games. And Qbert was in that too, of course. I don't know if that was a replicator or an original one they found, but think about it. If somebody called me on the phone today and says, I want a Qbert, I could go back and call the 30 people I sold one to if the phone numbers still are connected or whatever. I do have the phone numbers for everybody. But then they say, well, I hear they're worth a lot of money now. And I'm thinking, well, gosh, I only sold it to you for $800. Wow, I know. So then what is your cost to bring that game in and refurb it? Years ago, we weren't doing anything to these things. We were dusting them off, wiping them off, but they were only 4 or 5 years old. We fixed the cold solder connections or whatever to get them going. But now you have to completely do a complete refurb. In many cases, repaint the cabinet, put new artwork on. But, that's what you're forced to do now to make them look like new.
And I just want to show this really quickly. But this is an overhaul version of 1943 in the Dynamo cab. And Todd, we actually liked the way you put the LOT molding on, so that was the inspiration here. So thanks, man. We love you.
Beautiful. It's gorgeous.
That attention to detail. I'm so impressed. I'm not an easy guy to impress. I am so impressed. We're going to go ahead and I guess we'll wrap things up. We're a little over an hour here, and I want to give each of you an opportunity to, I don't know if there's anything that we haven't discussed that you want to, or you want to point people to a website. Let's start with Todd. Where can we find you?
Well, I first wanted to point out right behind me, we took apart the Street Fighter. So that's in one of the videos. My channel has over 1,600 episodes now. So I'm well over 1,200 hours, well over that. And I'd love you to check out the channel. We do different things on the channel. Video games, pinball machines, shuffle bowling alleys, skee balls. We also do shows. We'll go to a show and see what's going on. By the way, you'll be happy to know the machine and the video went right back together with no issues.
Warren, what's going on?
Well, let's see what's going on. That's a good question. I'm going to be getting back to going to retro gaming shows. I'm looking forward to it, and I've got one coming up in October in Columbus, Ohio. So the Korgs Con in Columbus on October 23rd. I will be there, and I'm looking forward to just being among people again.
Love it. And of course, looking forward to your book coming out here in looks like November.
Sometime in the fall, yeah. I'm not exactly sure when, but hopefully as soon as possible.
Hopefully the paper prices don't raise up too much and you have to charge like $75 a copy.
Well, that's the publisher's deal. That's out of my hands now. I'm not self-publishing.
It's true.
And Shilo, that is a really cool piece of artwork behind you. It kind of looks like Metropolis. Is that?
Thanks. Yeah, it's this a friend. His name is Hans, and he does this really cool airbrush artwork. And he actually does tons of models and stuff like models like women with female models. He paints them and stuff, and he's very talented. And it's a really cool piece of artwork. So thanks.
It's awesome. I love it. So with New Wave Toys, of course, the two different versions of Qbert, apart from the cabinets being different, is there any other difference between the two?
Well, just the Warren Davis edition is going to have a much lower build, and they'll each be individually numbered. So we want to make them as special as possible. We want to make enough that everybody in our community who wants one can snag one, but we don't want to make too many that it's kind of saturating, the market. So we thought 2,000 was a good number, and so we're really we're stoked about that. Like I said, there's 2 more days on our pre-sale, and want to thank everybody who's pre-ordered and taken advantage of the lower pricing. I mean, we really appreciate it. It's a win-win. You get best pricing, and we get to fund our operation.
Keep in mind that I've ordered 1,500 of those 2,000.
It's a smart investment.
So
that's your retirement right there.
I would like to ask Todd a question if I could.
Sure.
Yes, please.
To wrap up, because Todd, in some videos you've touched on your top 10 pinball machines, and I know Firepower is one. I believe Centaur is one. Total Nuclear Annihilation is one. Can you run through your top 10 pinball machines?
Yes, I can. In my opinion, number 1 is Big Bang Bar. Okay, a marvelous, wonderful game. Theater of Magic is number 2. Funhouse is number 3. Class of 1812, which is a Gottlieb, I might add, is number 4. Number 5 is Pinbot, the amazing Pinbot.
Pinbot, right? Yes.
And number 6 is Total Nuclear Annihilation, a marvelous, incredibly wonderful game that was the best game, I think, of the last 6 years when it came out. I was just so impressed. But there's only 500 of them, so the chances of you guys playing one are pretty slim. But I got up to about that because I actually only had originally 5 games for many years. I'd have to think about the others. But I moved TNA in there after I played it at one of the shows. I've only played it one night, so I haven't had a chance to really delve into it. But I understand Spooky Pinball will make them again. Of course, they're having the parts problems too, but not as nearly as bad. They're working on so many wonderful games. Think of it, the pinball industry's really doing well, with the exception of the lack of parts. Brand new video games are not coming out. Pinballs are. So arcade video games are not being manufactured anywhere near the levels they are. And when they do, they're these giant screen versions. Everybody's seen the new Galaxian and the Pac-Man, which are beautiful, wonderful games. Can you imagine Qbert on one of those, 10-foot screens? A newly realized one. By the way, Warren, do you think they're going to license a Qbert, a big screen Qbert, for anytime soon? Is that possible?
I really do not have any clue what is happening in Sony's mind with Qbert. The impression I get is that it's just not on their radar, and sometimes I'm not even sure they're aware that they own the property. So it's anybody's guess. Yeah.
That would be so neat.
Shilo, are you thinking of making a miniature pinball table? Oh, he's not going to tell us, is he?
Oh yeah, I mean, been thinking and about it for a long time. So,
well,
yeah,
you'd be crazy enough to do it.
I mean, we would have to do a digital play field. There's
not the same.
There's just no way we can get the ball physics to work properly and all that kind of stuff. So
unless you get some PIM particles. Oh, no Marvel fans? Really? Crickets? PIM particles. Ant-Man. All right, forget it.
Oh, Ant-Man, yeah. We'll have to hire Ant-Man to make them.
Somebody in the chat? Anybody understand what I just said?
I got the reference.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Got one. He's quicker than the rest of us.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course, any decent arcade needs to have some pins in it,
I got a friend who's just crazy about 8-ball deluxe. I don't know why that was so special. It was more my older brother's generation with the pinball, but sometimes there were some pretty cool pinball machines. Todd shown quite a few amazing ones there with like the Munsters one looked amazing. Multi-level, that's what I want to see. You get a working miniaturized pinball with multi-levels, fully just miniaturized. But I didn't think about the physics. I guess you're right. You would have to, you'd have to use that Ant-Man technology, I guess, currently for that to work. But sounds like something to be invented.
Yep.
Gentlemen, thank you guys so much for joining me today. This was like a make-a-wish. If I was I can't tell you how much I enjoyed this, and having each and every one of you here is a great honor for me. I would never have known, being the 16 or 15-year-old loser that I was, that someday I would be talking with the creator of Qbert, somebody who made a career out of gaming where I was punished and discouraged from it, somebody who's made a career out of repairing the machines, and somebody who has taken the time and the respect to recreate these machines of my youth, my teenage years, with such detail that you really honored and respected the memory of my youth, the nostalgia of my youth, and made it affordable. And also, I don't have a big house, so even if I could afford them, I wouldn't have any place to put them, and I would need to have a man cave and probably be single for that to work. So this really solves a lot of problems financially, for the space, and in relationship. But thank you guys so much, and I look forward to seeing what new creations Shilo's working on. And always looking forward to more videos from Todd Tuckey there at TNT Amusements. A lot to learn there, a lot of inspiration. And Warren, I can't wait to see what else you've got under your hat that will continue to impress us. And I'm so glad that you're so open to people recreating that work and supporting it, and writing the book that you're writing to share your story. Because as I mentioned when I first kicked this off, those arcade games for many of my generation were the escape we needed during good memories and bad memories. But like I said, all the memories of the arcade were always good ones, and I always look back at them fondly. And just a real honor to be able to talk with all of you. And thank you again. And we'll have links to everything for Warren's book, to pre-ordering Qbert, and of course, TNT Amusements website if you want to buy a real pinball machine or arcade machine.
Or just watch the channel.
Well, yeah, but if you want to buy one, Todd refurbishes them. In the way that Shilo goes through all this detail, Todd fixes things in a way that's like overkill. He over-engineers some of these repairs, and the folks that work for him Steve Wright does the paint touch-ups, and you've got Frank there, and I'm sure there's a lot of other people I'm not mentioning, but they all have a like-minded attention to detail and making it better, but keeping it true and honest to what it was. So,
is Wallace back there yet?
No, he's not back. Wallace is hard to believe. He's almost 85, and he stayed away because of the COVID.
Yeah.
So he hasn't come back, but his bench is there, so he can come back.
Is Frank doing okay?
Frank is getting out of the hospital tomorrow. So
that's good news.
A hernia and appendix removed. So he'll be out. So we have a crew. I just hired 2 new guys. So we are so busy. We actually had our record January, February, March, and April in sales of all time.
Wow.
And May was okay, but June looks like it's a record. I'm not 100% sure yet. I have to look back at all the old. But people are buying games like mad, and we're working 7 days a week, 18 hours a day. And
so you're actually selling more to the home market now than you
all
did.
to the mostly to the home. We have some classic arcades that are buying stuff now from us because they don't have time themselves to get the games ready. And we do sell a lot of stuff as is. Handyman specials. If you watch our bargain basement videos, you can buy stuff for half the price or less if you want to do the work yourself. We'll just make sure it's working, and then, we've been doing a lot of that. And as I said, the arcade one-ups have really helped. The replicades are perfect for people who live in a tiny apartment, and they can have a whole line of games to play on their shelf. And they're perfect for that. Everybody always worries, one's going to hurt the other. No, it helps. It helps. It gets more awareness. Our arcades, this business could have died if we didn't have all these classic arcades. COVID really screwed all of us. Everybody got hurt, including my party business. But do you know I've run over 25,000 parties? There's one going on right now. 25,000 parties. Birthday parties, get-togethers, or whatever, with all these classic games, and everybody that comes in has a ball because they love the 80s feel. We have a few new games, yes, but they like the 80s feel, and everybody makes a beeline for all the classic games. So
it's better than a bouncy house. Way better.
well, they serve their purpose. My kids love Chuck E. Cheese. They did. That's the #1 party place in the country. Obviously, they've had more parties than anybody else. But I think I'm in second place.
Nice.
All the parties in the last 34 years of Dirt doing birthday parties. 34 years. So I was not in as early as Chuck E. Cheese, but I was in there.
Well, you're all an inspiration to those of us who, apart from competitive gaming, to find a career in gaming, to do something you're passionate about, that likely, and I didn't really get around to getting into the details, but likely parents were saying, yeah, you need to get a real job. And here you guys have pioneered that, and it's very inspirational. And I just want to thank you all again for showing up today and entertaining, humoring me. Mike from Starfighters Arcade, the largest arcade in Arizona, was scheduled to be here, but unfortunately something came up and he wasn't able to make it. But we'll certainly revisit with him, and I'll go down to the arcade. And he's over the top. He's got, I think, over 200 pinball machines, over 100 stand-up upright arcade machines.
Hopefully at least one Qbert.
I'm sure Qubert's in there, and he's even got the tops of the arcade machines decorated like Battlestar Galactica and Ultraman and Johnny Sacco and his flying robot and all these little models and ships, and projectors play 80s movies on the walls, and the albums of Duran Duran, and decorate the walls, and you step back in time. There's a telephone booth that's from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, or inspired by. So it's really like Back to the Future. You're stepping into the past. It's just the way I remember it. And the scale, you go to, I don't know, you go to a restaurant and they have like 4 arcade machines. They call that the arcade. That's not an arcade. Arcades had hundreds of machines, and that cacophony of noise, like I say, like a casino. To bring that back, and the fact that they have brought it back and it's doing so well, despite the pandemic, which of course several arcades around the country had closed, unfortunately. But the strong remain and continue to do well. To the audience, thank you guys so much for joining me today. Links for everything we talked about, ordering Qbert, Warren's book, the links to TNT Amusements website, their YouTube channel. And gentlemen, if there's any links you want me to include, please just send me an email and I'll add it to the video notes. Thank you so much for watching on behalf of Todd, Tuckey, Warren Davis, and Shilo Prychak. Thank you so much. And we'll see you all again very, very soon.
Good night.
Until then,
Thanks.
bye for now.
Bye-bye.